Chris Cantelmo here with another vibration. It's been a few days, and I'm starting to put together the future of Chris Cantelmo and the DMT message. After some reflection, it's become clear, and I'm sure it was more clear to other people than it was to me, because I'm in the middle of this thing, is I spent a lot of time reacting to negativity instead of just staying focused on the important stuff. And that's all just part of the learning process. Because as I said, till about a year ago, roughly, I had no presence on social media. And the severity and grotesqueness of some of the attacks on me were really shocking. I was really surprised. And I responded many times just out of anger or hurt, and just made fun of people or said, just told them to fuck off or whatever. What really I should have done is just not even address the negativity at all, just let it slide by. But it takes time to build up your thick skin. For me, it has anyway. I'm a sensitive person, believe it or not. And until I started doing this stuff, until I started doing DMT, I was one of the shyest people that you've ever met. Super quiet. In fact, I would say that the history of my life up until experimenting with DMT was one of depression and anxiety commingling with shyness, and to the extent where shyness, and when I say shyness, I mean like an inability to just express myself freely. Most of you have felt it. Maybe when you were in school, in class, teacher asked for a show of hands for the right answer, and you had the right answer, but you didn't want to speak up in class, so you didn't answer. And then other people answer, and they got the wrong answer, and you had the right answer the whole time. You're like, shit, why didn't I just speak up? But you couldn't quite do it. Well, that's how I was to like a pathological degree. I went through college and participated in, what I would do is I would look for classes where there was very little, few, if any, oral presentations. I sort of had to make my schedule so that I could get by without having to be the center of attention very often. So the fact that the idea that I would even walk around making a videotape or video of myself like this a year ago, I wouldn't even have thought about doing it. It's just something I couldn't do. So anyone who's been following me from the beginning, really what you're seeing play out in real time is someone just sort of very shy, average Joe who had the DMT experience and just had his mind completely expanded. And in addition to being a shy person, I'm also someone who's very, very, I'm dogged in my attention to things. And if something becomes important to me, I go for it, like in a big way, in all areas. I'm a workaholic, and and that's helped me in my life in many ways, but it's also hurt me in my life in many ways, because I probably spent a lot more time away from my family at the office than I really needed to. I probably could have done less work. And I think part of the workaholism and sort of going overboard when I get into things also comes from the shyness that I felt for most of my life, because there was all this energy inside of me that needed to get out and get expressed. And I know a lot of you guys can relate to what I'm talking about. It's anyone who's most people don't enjoy public speaking, but there was about 10 years during my life where I literally I couldn't do it. I would if I had to give a presentation at work or something, I would be sick that day, and I would bring up some excuse and make it up in some other way, go around and talk to people individually or something. And it was a real problem. And it was something when I was in started when I was in like senior year in high school, where I just started to notice that I would get in class, or even out on socially was even worse. But if I became the center of attention, my throat would just seize up and my heart would start pounding, and like everything would just leave my head. I would just completely malfunction. And it's just really was a terrible, terrible thing. So, and it never really got much better when I discovered, the doctor prescribed Xanax to me, and that helped things substantially, but it didn't solve the problem by any stretch, and it had downsides to it. And like I said in other videos, I struggled with real serious depression and anxiety my entire life. And the feeling of not being able to express myself the way that I wanted to the extent that needed to be. I couldn't say what needed to be said. And I know a lot of you guys listening, you know what that feels like, and it's a terrible thing. And then I started doing DMT, and suddenly, like, whoa, like this whole other world that I had hoped, like in my wildest dreams, I had hoped that there was a magical world out there, that there was a spirit world. And like, I got into science in high school and college, and then I spent my career in science. High performance liquid chromatography, mass spectrometry. And science, people in science, not all scientists, but most people in science, there's sort of the default setting is atheism. Some people can sort of do science during the day and go home and be spiritual at night. That's sort of the exception to the rule, I think. I don't know though, maybe not. Maybe there are a lot of people out there like me, but I was definitely an atheist. Severe atheist. And I would, and when thinking back about how I got started as an atheist, because I went to my parents, my dad was Catholic, my mom was Protestant, and they used to send us to Sunday school when we were little, my brothers and I didn't like Sunday school at all. And I had this stupid thing that happened to me that affected me for a long time, where I was in Sunday school and twiddling with my shoelaces, and my finger got knotted up in my shoelace, and we were going around reading from some little Bible book or something, and it came to me, and I couldn't read my part because my finger was stuck in my shoelace. And I look up at the teacher like with this panicked look, and she looked and said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "My finger's stuck." And everybody laughed, and it was just a good-natured laugh, but to me it felt like I was like being ridiculed, and it really freaked me out. I remember feeling just so terrible. It's funny how little things can have such a big effect. And I don't think that's what, like, I really think the panic attacks and anxiety weren't so much, they seem to have a biological basis. They seem like they were so severe that I don't know that a life event could have created that situation. Anyway, as I was getting into science, the notion that living things could exist without a God, without some special magical component, becomes sort of a central point in biology and biochemistry and chemistry. And one of the things that happens with scientists is they get a little full of themselves. Like when I was around religious people or spiritual people, I felt intellectually superior because I felt like I knew enough about chemistry to know that atoms and molecules could adjust themselves in just the right way, and bingo, you get life, and that there wasn't any spirituality required. Now, little did I know that that was basically bullshit. And I kept believing that bullshit through my 56th year. And it wasn't until DMT that, boom, I got introduced to the spirit world in a big way. And that just has made all the difference. And it could be just a coincidence. It could be the direct action of DMT. It could be a biochemical interaction now that I do DMT on a fairly regular basis. Just having that, what I call the neurotransmitter of childhood, reintroduced to the system. I don't know if it brings our brains biologically back to a younger time or something, like pre-anxiety for me, I don't know. But certainly getting in touch with the spirit world has made all the difference. And I really think that's what's helped evaporate away the shyness that I used to have. And if any of you guys have felt anything like that, I'd be interested to get your take on it. I guess one of the things that I think even the staunchest atheists are never absolutely sure, right? Because you can't ever be absolutely sure about spirituality or whether or not there's a God. And it could be that we'll never find out that there's a God. But there do seem to be a lot of stories, especially near-death experiences, where people do report coming in contact with this higher, all-loving power. And it's quite likely that we'll never know until we die. So even severe atheists, Richard Dawkins type atheists, you sort of sense, and as they get older, you sort of sense that they're really not quite sure. But they figure, if there is a God, great, but there probably isn't a God. But so an atheist is sort of not ever quite sure, where someone who is a spiritualist is sure. And it's just easier to go through life when you're sure about things. So now there is absolutely no doubt, zero doubt in my mind that there is an incredible spirit world out there. Some of the spirits take the form of, I've talked about this before, where some of these entities seem like spirits from our ancestors, ancestral spirits, and some of the spirits are too electronic and futuristic to have come from the past, unless they're like Graham Hancock talks about. If there could have been super sophisticated civilizations thousands of years ago that just got completely wiped out. All traces of the high technology were wiped out by a asteroid impact or something like that. That's quite possible. And it could be that if that was the case, these like very futuristic entities, which I tend to think of as aliens, maybe they're also ancestral spirits. It may not be knowable. So anyway, I think what I'm going to do is I'll go back to putting out daily talks like this because it makes me feel better. I felt a little isolated, which is, people who are talking about DMT like this, because everyone thinks that we're crazy, you tend to feel isolated, and it gets really, it's hard. It's not easy to go through life when everybody thinks that you're crazy, when you know that you're not crazy. And people who have done DMT, they all agree, yeah, this is going on. But most people, they don't want to come out and say and talk publicly about it because people do think you're crazy. So, one of the thing that you guys can do, one good thing that could come out of these vibrations, and Joe Rogan does a great job talking about this every chance he gets, is if let's say you've tried DMT. I might have talked about this in my last vibration, but if you tried DMT and you're sort of afraid to talk about it with your family or your workmates, you should point to this video, or one of the videos, or a clip from Joe Rogan, and say, hey, there's this stuff, this neurotransmitter stuff that people are experimenting with that allows people greater access to visual consciousness, and people are seeing these amazing things. And so just like put it out there and say, what do you think about this? Get people thinking about it. And then maybe a couple of weeks later say, hey, did you see that other, God, it's amazing what they're saying about this DMT stuff. It sounds like some pretty interesting, sophisticated people are talking about it. Maybe it's true. And then you say, wow, I think maybe I'm gonna try this stuff. And just get a reaction from people. See how they're gonna react. And I think everyone, if we all start talking about this, if we're not talking about it if people who are doing DMT are only talking about it with each other, we're not going to get this situation moving forward like we want to. And why do we want it to move forward? Because as soon as more people see as clear as day with their own eyes that we are immersed in a spirit world, their approach to life is going to change dramatically for the better. There's going to be no downside. Some people might get a little afraid by that, I guess. It could scare some people. But I think knowing is better than not knowing. And I think most people, because for the most part, the spirits are just so beautiful and playful and interactive and fantastic. I've had a few very terrifying experiences with entities that do seem to have ill intent. But again, I think knowing is better than not knowing. So do what you can to spread the word about DMT and what people are saying about it. See you guys later.